But if you close your eyes,
Top 10 of the most dangerous cities in the world. America is rife with dangerous cities, or so you may think. While cities like Baltimore and Chicago have seen their fair share of violence in their very recent past, outside of the confines of America, violence and danger are much more commonplace. The world's most violent cities are almost exclusively in South and Central America. There are a number of factors at work that have led to escalating danger in these areas, none more prominent than the drug war and the crushing poverty that envelopes many developing nations. Economically, these are areas that have been struggling for decades, and as people struggle to get ahead, they often turn to crime and violence to make things work. Here are 10 of the world's most dangerous cities. Happy traveling. Number 10. St. Louis, USA. We wanted to include one entry from the US, and in terms of the rankings, St. Louis is the most dangerous city in America, beating out other relatively dangerous cities like Chicago. St. Louis has suffered from a rash of violence in recent years, with the riots in Ferguson being a perfect example. Parts of St. Louis are economically ravaged, with lots of poverty and violence creating a vast disconnect between the people and the local leaders. Though St. Louis is vastly more safe than cities in Central America, it is still suffering from serious issues. Number 9. Guatemala City, Guatemala. Yet another Central American metropolis. Guatemala City shares many of the same troubles as its neighbors, El Salvador and Honduras. Gang problems, drug trafficking, and poverty all have people fleeing the country, and there seems to be no answer thus far as to how to deal with it. Though it is a beautiful city with tons of history and culture, the danger of crime and violence is enough to dissuade even the bravest tourists. Number 8. Acapulco, Mexico. Acapulco, Mexico used to be a place filled with tourists, flocking to the pristine beaches, blue water, and ample margaritas. That time has passed, and the city is now beset by danger and violence. The Mexican military has even had to be called in to help calm things down, all while the city tries to keep attracting tourism dollars. With many other Mexican locales to visit, Acapulco is one city that travelers can easily avoid. Number 7. Caracas, Venezuela. Venezuela has slipped into a deeply troubled economic time, with Hugo Chávez's government doing more harm than good in trying to get their struggling nation to its feet. As a result, things have deteriorated, and Caracas has become rife with gang violence. More than 24,000 people were murdered in Venezuela in 2014, if that puts things into perspective. On a swing through South America, consider skipping Caracas. Number 6. Baghdad, Iraq. Though Baghdad is one of the world's oldest and most culture-rich cities, there is really no reason for casual tourists to be there at this point in time. Like Kabul, Baghdad is still in the throes of war, and it is considered unsafe for travelers. Perhaps in another decade. Number 5. Kabul, Afghanistan. This is a rather obvious entry, but Kabul, Afghanistan, is not really a place that travelers and tourists are going to want to visit, at least for the foreseeable future. The city and nation are still embroiled in the post-9/11 war on terror, with the Taliban and US forces duking it out across their countryside. Add to that the growth of ISIS, along with tensions in Iran, and Afghanistan is pretty much scratched off the list of must-see places. Number 4. San Salvador, El Salvador. A relatively short trip from the dangers of Honduras is San Salvador, the largest city in the small nation of El Salvador. El Salvador is notorious for spawning one of the most violent and feared gangs in the entire world, MS-13. Because of the city's gang problem, many refugees have headed north in search of relief from the violence and poverty gripping the country. The drug war hasn't done this country any favors, and the effects of the Contra operations in the 1980s still haunt the region as well. Number 3. Cape Town, South Africa. It's not just shark attacks that should have you on edge in Cape Town. Crime is a real problem in this South African city, with a lot of the blame being placed at the feet of the South African government. Gang fighting is one of the main reasons Cape Town has become the most dangerous city in Africa. Though Cape Town has its scary parts, tourist areas, thankfully, are typically out of harm's way. Number 2. Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Don't be fooled by the glitz and glamour of the World Cup and Olympic Games. The city is in trouble, despite the fact that Rio is attracting big-time events. The seedy underbelly of violence and despair is still very much on display, and it can lead to some real danger for travelers. Tips for staying safe include passing on any drugs offered, staying sober, and not showing off your gadgets including smartphones and tablets. Number 1. San Pedro Sula, Honduras. San Pedro Sula, located in the northern part of Honduras, was the most violent and dangerous city on earth, to the rankings. The city, called their murder capital of the world, has been beset by violence stemming from the drug trade, and numerous gangs fighting for power. Political corruption and poverty also play into it, and many refugees have fled north to, you guessed it, the US. For those trekking through Central America, you may want to steer clear of San Pedro Sula.